Vivo's T lineup of phones have always been great value for money devices, and the latest one in that list is the Vivo T1 Pro 5G, and it of course looks very similar and has very similar specs to the iQOO Z6 Pro 5G. Now since I didn't test that iQOO device, I decided to take the T1 Pro 5G out for a spin and compare it against the OnePlus Nord CE2, all three phones that are in the same price range. Well, I'm Arshad, you're watching Trakin Tech English. Let's find out which one of these two phones under Rs 25,000 should you pick. Now the rear panel on both the T1 Pro 5G and the Nord CE2 is made entirely of plastic, but the translucent plastic on the Nord CE2 looks very toyish and it attracts a lot of smudges, which the T1 Pro 5G does not. The feel, the fit and finish of the T1 Pro 5G feels a lot better despite it being made of plastic. But yes, you must note that the T1 Pro 5G is definitely thicker and heavier than the Nord CE2. Moving on, the T1 Pro 5G also doesn't feel as slippery as the Nord CE2 in daily usage, and I've said this before in the past as well. I really love matte plastic frames compared to the glossy ones on phones, and therefore the T1 Pro 5G definitely gets more of my affection. Also, for some odd reason, OnePlus has decided to remove the very iconic alert slider, but has added a headphone jack instead, which of course is not available on the T1 Pro. And you know what will be another functional advantage is if you actually hit the red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever we put out an awesome new tech video. Now talking about audio itself, you do get high-res certification and support on the T1 Pro 5G, but you will have to use a USB Type-C dongle for it. And both these phones actually come with a mono speaker setup. Now while the OnePlus does sound louder and has slightly more bass, what I did notice is that the T1 Pro 5G had far cleaner mids and treble, making your videos sound very clear, especially when they had a lot of vocals. Take a listen for yourself. It is a toss-up when it comes to the design of these two phones. While the T1 Pro 5G has the better in-hand feel, it looks better, and of course it feels more sturdy. The OnePlus Nord CE2 definitely has that functional advantage with the 3.5mm headphone jack. Now coming to the displays, the first thing that I noticed, of course, was that U-shaped drop notch on the T1 Pro 5G compared to the punch hole on the OnePlus Nord CE2. But interestingly, of course, the T1 Pro 5G's chin is slightly smaller compared to the Nord CE2. Now, while I do prefer a punch hole, I don't really mind the drop notch on the T1 Pro 5G for two specific reasons. Primarily because you get a much brighter display which can go up to 1300 nits of peak brightness while watching HDR videos on YouTube, which of course the OnePlus Nord CE2 cannot. It does look much brighter even in regular usage as well. Also, I must mention that you do not get Netflix playback in HDR on both these phones. Now the second reason why I'm generally okay with that drop notch is the T1 Pro 5G actually comes with a professional 100% DCI-P3 color gamut space, and therefore it showcases natural colors when you're viewing pictures on this display, as opposed to the Nord CE2, which almost always shows the wrong colors. But the Nord CE2 definitely has an advantage with the Corning Gorilla Glass 5 protection as opposed to Panda Glass protection on the T1 Pro 5G's display. Also a part of the display is the in-display fingerprint scanner, and you get an optical in-display fingerprint scanner on both these phones, and they're fairly fast to unlock. There's not really too much of a difference between the two. But when it comes to the haptic feedback, the T1 Pro 5G of course has a Z-axis haptic motor, and therefore the touches and vibration feels more precise as opposed to the basic motor inside the Nord CE2, which feels very unrefined. So all in all, when it comes to the display, of course, because of that professional grade tuning, the brighter display, and the better haptic feedback, I would say that the T1 Pro wins this round. Now to test the cameras on these phones, I shot in beautiful Missouri. Let's take a look at the camera samples. Now, starting with the details that the individual 64 megapixel cameras can retrieve. While the center sharpness is equally good on both, the Vivo T1 Pro 5G offers better corner sharpness. And as you can tell from this image of the new Mercedes C200, the Vivo T1 Pro 5G also offers better contrast in general. Now, when it comes to HDR processing, the T1 Pro 5G offers way better dynamics with the right amount of sheen in the plants and the leaves that are lit up. Plus, the T1 Pro 5G has less noise in the shadows. Yes, the OnePlus Nord CE2 has a slightly better control over the harsh sun, but the flat look of the picture is not even remotely good looking. In fact, I've noticed that the OnePlus Nord CE2 suffers terribly with multi-stack processing, not just in HDR but also in portrait mode, which I will come to in a bit. Now, when it comes to color reproduction, it is closer to true to life on the Vivo T1 Pro 5G, albeit with a slight warm color tint. The OnePlus Nord CE2 has a tendency to make the reds deeper, and the greens are definitely never faithfully reproduced. Now, both the phones also have an 8 megapixel ultrawide and are not very sharp, but just because the T1 Pro 5G can do better HDR stacking, color reproduction, exposure, you can see how much more dynamic and vibrant Vivo's pictures look. Now, you also get 2 megapixel macro cameras on both that can go as close as 4 centimeters of a subject, and as macro cameras go, they are okay, nothing to write home about. Now, shots of people, basically friends and family, are generally great on both the phones. The T1 Pro 5G, although does have a slightly better facial tone, but again, most people won't notice. What people will notice, however, is how the Nord CE2 completely drops the ball on the portrait processing, like I mentioned before. I mean, the T1 Pro 5G has captured such a good portrait of Sajid here that it looks like it was shot from a flagship phone as opposed to OnePlus that looks like a complete mess. Now, selfies are undoubtedly better looking on the T1 Pro 5G. I mean, they're sharper, offer better dynamic range, have far better facial tones, and great color accuracy too. And I don't even have to talk about the selfie portraits. The edge detection is clean and the bokeh is extremely creamy, even for one created by a software algorithm. Great job, Vivo. Now, low light pictures are average looking on both, even with night mode on, but in certain extreme low light situations, Vivo does create a cleaner looking image with less noise. And I got far fewer blurry shots on the OnePlus as opposed to Vivo with night mode on. Low light selfies with night mode have an artificial look on Vivo, but I like the color science. Now, in 4K video recording using the rear camera, Vivo comes out on top once again. You get a higher bitrate recording out of the box, which means more details. The colors and dynamic range is better, but more importantly, you get EIS. I mean, that is such a godsend. I had started wondering if brands had completely forgotten about providing stabilization on phones under Rs 25,000. Now, sound recording is equally good on both though. And the Vivo can actually do stabilization. Look at this. EIS, and it's looking extremely stable. And the Vivo can actually do stabilization. Look at this. EIS, and it's looking extremely stable. In front camera video recording, both the phones top out at 1080p 30 fps, but Vivo offers electronically stabilized footage again. Yes, there is a huge crop factor, but you get such good stabilization. Also, again, the facial tones are way better. I do like the sound recording of the OnePlus slightly better though. Look at the kind of quality that you get with it. The facial tones are damn good on the Vivo. Look at the kind of quality that you get with it. The facial tones are damn good on the Vivo. Now, I don't even have to say this. You've seen the pictures. The Vivo T1 Pro 5G trumps when it comes to camera performance and leaves the OnePlus Nord CE2 biting the dust. Another big advantage on the T1 Pro 5G is that fantastic, tried and tested super mid-range processor, the Snapdragon 778G. The Nord, of course, comes with Dimensity 900, and in all of our benchmarks, including Antutu and Geekbench, the T1 Pro definitely comes out on top. In fact, the T1 Pro actually returned the highest Antutu score on any Snapdragon 778G phone that we've tested till date. Stability scores on CPU throttle and 3D Mark While Left stress test are very similar, but again, in 3D Mark While Left stress test, you actually get a better loop score on the T1 Pro 5G. I tried BGMI for gaming, and I know a lot of you folks actually like playing that game, and you can get a maximum of HDR and Ultra or Smooth and Extreme graphics on both the phones. But in Call of Duty Mobile, you can actually get higher graphics setting on the 778G inside the Vivo T1 Pro 5G. And therefore, actually, the T1 Pro 5G is better for gaming compared to the OnePlus Nord CE2 as well. So even if you're a gamer, this is possibly the phone that you must consider. And of course, Vivo's also added this massive cooling chamber, which helps with keeping the heat dissipation low, which is not available on the Nord CE2. Now, call quality and 4G performance is great on both the phones, but you do get support for 8 5G bands on the Nord CE2 as opposed to 7 on the Vivo T1 Pro 5G. Now that it makes a huge difference because 5G is currently not available in India, and widespread rollout is at least a couple of years away. Now the T1 Pro 5G has a slightly larger 4700 mAh battery inside the phone compared to 4500 mAh unit inside the Nord CE2. And I don't know what Vivo's done with the background task management or whatever it is, but you get far better battery life on the T1 Pro 5G. I got really good battery life on this phone, and it definitely outlasts the OnePlus Nord CE2. What I noticed is that you can get over a day's worth of usage on the T1 Pro 5G and 7 hours plus of screen on time compared to 6 hours plus on the Nord CE2. Now with the Vivo T1 Pro 5G, you do get 66 watt flash charge support and you get Super VOOC 65 watt support on the Nord CE2. And both these chargers can charge the phone from 0 to 100 in about 30 to 35 minutes, which is about par for the course for 65 watt chargers, and therefore they're evenly matched. But battery performance is slightly better on the T1 Pro 5G, so therefore it takes the pole position out there. The Vivo T1 Pro 5G runs on FunTouch OS 12 based on Android 12, and it has the latest April security patch compared to the OnePlus Nord CE2. Ever since I reviewed, and it is still running on Android 11 based on Oxygen OS 12 and has only the January security patch. I don't know what OnePlus is doing. Evidently, Vivo has been great with providing software updates on time, and I did mention that in my software updates video as well, and OnePlus has been dropping the ball lately. But yes, I will say this, that OnePlus has far fewer bloatware apps pre-installed compared to FunTouch OS, which just overdoes it. Thankfully though, all of it can be uninstalled, so that's not too much of a stress. However, Oxygen OS does feel cleaner and slicker in terms of UI elements, features, and general software itself. But I am again reminded of the fact that it's not running the latest Android software. I hope OnePlus fixes that situation soon, but right now it's an easy win, according to me, for the Vivo for at least providing the latest software updates. On rare occasions, we have comparisons where one phone comes out as the clear winner. And this is one of them. The Vivo T1 Pro 5G has the better battery life, the better performance, the better camera performance, the better display quality, and it doesn't hurt that you get the latest software update on this phone. The OnePlus Nord CE2 can only be recommended over the Vivo T1 Pro 5G for the fact that it offers a 3.5mm headphone jack and it has a slightly cleaner UI. But then again, these are not very strong points in favor of the OnePlus. I don't know. If you have to ask me, I would easily pick the T1 Pro 5G and live with the software problems that I have. So what do you folks prefer? Let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, this is Ershad signing off. Keep tracking and stay safe.